June 2nd special council meeting. We got a few things to go over today. First of all, Bill Brecken was kind enough to take some time of his day to come and talk. We're going to talk about sidewalks, walking, county issues, county participation. Bill and I were going to have lunch or something here, and we decided this would probably be a good format to do it so we could all catch up and see what we were doing. Before the meeting, just for an example, can we talk about the project down south? Yep. Bill's well aware of our stormwater concerns and seems real willing. We were down across from Zorba's between the railroad yard and Helen Silva's property where we've got a stormwater dump going in there. Helen has complained about that for years, Ted, right? I think, yeah. We've approached the county multiple times, and from what I hear, and I made it real clear to Bill that I'm from the Elkfield listening to these on a third party, but what I've heard is that the railroad train is in the way to impede the ability of them to come in and dig that out.
That's what I was told. The maintenance area supervisor said that now they can't get in there to do the cleaning. They're afraid they might hit the train. So they haven't been in there for a while now to do the cleaning.
So, Mr. Brecken, I mean, what that tells me is the county is acknowledging the fact that they've got an issue down there. I actually was on the phone with Helen yesterday talking about it. She's quite frustrated with it. And she indicated that she would be willing to let them come across her property and get into that. So part of what this is, you know, this could be just a phone call to you, but part of it is kind of setting a precedent moving forward of cooperation and moving forward. Now, I believe the person you talked to was a Rob Hall that you talked to.
I've talked to the Rob and we've talked and to
Jim?
the supervisor, the area supervisor here that's doing the work. So
okay. But unfortunately, when these things come up in the meeting, we task Ted to go forward and ask it and come back, and oftentimes, from my perception, it seems like there's resistance.
Right. Well, I think, you know, one of the goals that I'm going to, you know, try to make is I think it's important that we make site visits. You know, like I get out there and actually see this. So once you see it, it makes a difference. I know one of my commitments too is that we got to protect our water. And so I think this is a perfect case of, you know, we should be looking at not only the dredging that out possibly, but how do we protect it from any salt or different things getting into that water. So we want to kind of protect that. So it's really kind of starting the conversation and making sure that we're working together and trying to resolve those kind of issues. So
we actually came up with a couple good ideas in
I think so
the few
too.
minutes that we were down there.
Yep, I think so too. So we'll do everything I can in you know, getting together, and we'll bring those Rob and Tim up here, and we'll take a look at that and see what our options become.
So following up on what you said is normal visits and whatever. I can't remember a time in the last at least couple years that Tim or Rob have been to a meeting or something in here.
I guess I can't address that. I don't know.
It's been a while, but you know, I think Cross Lake is kind of an important part of the county. You know, I think we contribute a lot. I think we kind of need a lot of help. We got a lot of stuff going on. We're going to get into the crosswalks, the sidewalks, the pedestrian. Right. You know, as we go on, we got some concerned people here that are all in for that. Corinne has actually come from the Army Corps too, which is fabulous. You know, she's got a concern here and an interest in it. So
when I think we have to look into the future and anticipate what our needs are going to be so that we can get that prepared and move down and have an organized plan.
So before the meeting, I gave you this Greater Minnesota Transportation Alternative.
Yes.
Obviously, you haven't had a chance to look at it, but we have looked into the future a little bit, quite a few sidewalks, crosswalks, you know, different things, and you can take that and look at it.
Okay, thank you.
We have done some work on it.
Okay, thanks.
So, yep, you betcha, Bill. Thank you. Let's move into the crosswalks. The city went ahead last week and repainted, and I don't mean to be coming at you, but I'm probably going to come at you a little bit, so I apologize. But the county had delayed in painting the crosswalks, and I'm again out in the outfield participating on this. But Ted had enough money in his budget, so he went ahead and did it. we'd really like to enhance our crosswalks considerably so that people see them and expand them, you know, to areas. I think, can I ask for the public to come up and help me out with this a little bit? What we're trying to accomplish? Anybody have any interest? I'm looking at Cindy and Pat.
Cindy Mugato with the Cross Lake Chamber of Commerce. So my concern was just really, the immediate concern was that crosswalk at the intersection of 3 and 66, where you did paint the big white lines, which are fabulous. Thank you very much. There's a lot of people up here this year. I've never seen so many people in the Welcome Center. Folks that are visiting, folks that are moving here. It'd be interesting to do a census this year because it would just be, we're not the town of 2,500 anymore for sure. The resorts have indicated that they are at capacity or have very few weeks available for visitors. The campground, I mean, I can let Corrine speak to this, but when I last asked them about 3 weeks ago, they were 94% full for the summer. So there's just a lot of people using the sidewalks, using the paths, shopping in the businesses, and those crosswalks are imperative that they're able to cross the street. Having those big white lines, they're so much more vivid. You can see them as you're driving down the road, you can see them. I know you guys have suggested that we have like the blinking lights that say, you know, you could push the button and it would blink so that people could cross. That's important. So I am a fan of how many ever painted lit crosswalks we can get within the city, and I thank you for your support to make it happen.
Thanks, Cindy. Hello, Pat.
Pat Netco, 36084, County Road 66, Cross Lake. Thank you, Ted. The wide stripes are awesome, and you can see them, and it's caused me to even look more often, and because I'm on that road every day many times. I would like to reiterate what Cindy said. This last weekend, my store alone had record sales. Last year was the best Memorial Weekend we ever had. This year was up 30% from that. And we set an all-time one-day record in our store on Sunday. The people, they're everywhere. And we're hearing from many, many people that they're going to be staying here. They're figuring out how to work remotely, and they're staying at their places. So we have a ton of people here. The turnover from the campground, the walking, the safety of crossing is a huge issue. I know the county's concerns for putting a crosswalk somewhere around Bald Eagle Pass, Lake Country Crafts and Cones, Kicks, somewhere in that area. However, something is really needed there. I watched a few times when I was out watering, people trying to cross that road. It's scary. And I realize with the traffic and the driving that people aren't used to crosswalks there. So little signs on the side, something. We need some help with making it safe for our pedestrians. And we very much appreciate, Ted, just going ahead and doing it and the wide stripes there. There are a couple of areas. One is, Cindy, you can help me out with this. I think there's 2 crosswalks that have not been repainted that are not at roads. And I don't know if they, up by the old school and Log Landing, that I don't know that those are needed there, but if we added one in here, would that help reduce the amount of them by not repainting the other 2 that maybe are not needed? I don't know if they are or not. That's not my decision to make. But we would very much appreciate some consideration for some crosswalk in the area that I spoke of. So thank you.
Thanks, Pat. So again, I just want to emphasize, come on up, Pam, that we've got Bill here, a captive audience. We've got an opportunity to express to him because he's out in the outfield in the county all the time. And, you know, we talk about things, but we don't get in front of him too often. So this might be a good opportunity to just kind of make him be aware. I think he's totally supportive of the ideas. So go ahead, Pam.
Pam Graves, Cross Lake. Thank you for coming. And you should be disappointed that we had to spend money in our budget to do something that the county should have done already. And Ted, thank you. the crosswalks are not just for the drivers. Those of us that have lived here for 10 years or more, we know that that faint line used to be the crosswalk. So we would sort of be aware that people could cross. But kids cross where they want to when they don't see crosswalks. They are random acts, stepping out onto the road, on their bikes. If you give them a painted sidewalk that's bold, at least their parents could say, excuse me? Use the crosswalks, use the safety areas so that not only the pedestrians know that's the place to cross, but that the drivers who don't live here year-round, that come by, they may have just bought a new place here, they don't know where those crosswalks are yet. So painting them, Ted, was, thank you.
Bill, I'm just kind of going off of memory here, but another kind of a frustration is the county road goes right through our town. And we've talked over the years about controlling the speed limit, lessening whatever. I don't think we can do it on select weekends. I think if we do it, it's got to be there all the time. But we've got parking on the county road and kids running out crossing the roads. So I'm not here to ask a particular question on it, but it seems like when we do it, we kind of get met at the door with, we're not going to do that because it's a county road, we've done the study and that's it. And so I guess if I could ask if the city had a little more input, at least within the city limits, knowing where our concerns are.
Right.
And Chief Lee would know what that is, but I think a lot of us know where they are.
Yep.
We see them.
Well, and Chief Lee, maybe you can help me with this too, but the speed limits are set on county roads by the state. So that's how we're going to have to lobby with the states to try to get that, the speed limits changed on a county road. So the county does not set the speed limits on the county roads. Getting back to the crosswalks, I had made that note too. I will bring Tim and Rob back up. We'll come back up. It'd be interesting to know where people are already choosing to walk across to. I think we need to identify that. Since there's not sidewalks on both sides, they're probably using the sidewalk on one side, and then when they want to get across, that's where they're, especially Crafts and Cones would be a spot that they'd want to cross with. So I think we have to identify where people are using crosswalks as a natural and see what we can do. I know that they've helped me with some other areas over in Nisswa, especially around Grandview, to help protect and manage the traffic and pedestrian flow. So maybe we can do that up here and really walk the streets. And I think that makes a difference, I think, for what they see too.
So how do you propose to do that? I think you obviously want to get some of the business owners, some input from them when you do it.
Well, exactly. And I think, if they can, if we can, again, help identify where people are using the crosswalk as a natural, that maybe would be an area that we can kind of look at too. I suppose there has to be some level of how many crosswalks we actually have along on the road there that is they're doing that, but we have to identify where people are using them just as a natural. They think this is where it ends or I need to cross.
Come on, Pat, come on up.
Linda and I would be glad to draw it on the sidewalk and tell you exactly where to put it.
Okay. Okay.
But I think even when we were out before the meeting and we were out standing there talking, you kind of initiated this, but you said, aren't you going to put a sidewalk on this side of the road?
Right.
And where did that come from? Did it just seem like a logical thing? Is that?
Well, again, yeah, because of the amount of traffic that you have going and the businesses on both sides, the sidewalk seems to be catering to I'll say the Corps of Engineers and the campground. And that's probably why it came up on that side originally. But you've got the school and you've got, all the other businesses on, I'll say the east side of that road.
Churches, shops, yeah.
Yeah. And so that should be, when we think about long-range planning, that should be the saying, hey, we're going to eventually have sidewalks in at least this area. So that should help us with the planning of also planning where the crosswalks are going to be.
So I think as you go through that book that you got, you're going to see that we have identified quite a few places.
Yep, on here.
I think a lot of that is budgeted out to 2024 or 2026.
Well, I have talked to staff before coming up here, is that with that application for some federal funding, and I think it's about $500,000, which would be presented, I think, in 2026, but next year we should know if we're getting that money, And then we can move up the projects early and get those done as soon as we can, knowing that the funding is going to come at a later time.
Okay, yeah, I'm a little more impatient.
Yeah.
Not in that
Well,
time frame,
well,
but the 2026 timeframe is
For
kind of
sure.
looking out.
For
We've got
sure.
an immediate need going on here right now, so.
Well, and I understand that, and I think that that's the one thing that, again, that we're learning, and especially our need to start looking further down the line, the future, because again, with the way the pandemic has been, and we're a destination. You know, people are coming here, they're either moving here. Something that helped me out on the real estate side is that we're seeing crazy prices on the real estate, but we're a national market today. We're having people coming from Colorado, California, state of Washington, and saying, why is the land so cheap here? And so that's part of the things that's pushing up our real estate prices that we're getting. So we have to really get behind planning into the future so that when a situation like this happens, we're a little bit better prepared for it. But this is kind of catching us a little off guard.
Yeah, it is. I mean, COVID definitely accelerated it.
Yes, no question. And so we're seeing that benefit, and I think with some of this, when it comes to especially, I'll say the sales tax that we have that is supposed to provide and work for our roads, this is a perfect example of how do we, use that money effectively in the communities that are helping us raise that money well too.
So what participation could the city of Cross Lake have in the county's planning?
I think it's building, for initially for me, and I thank you so much for being invited to this meeting, is that we've got to build a relationship. I've got to start coming here more often. Please invite me as often as possible. I sat in at just the end of the EDA meeting, and so that we know so I know and anticipate what's happening, as you're moving forward. So as I got to make myself more available to hear what's going on.
Could I ask you that if you're at the county level going to have a meeting of substance about this stuff, you could let us know?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think that's where it's going to come. It's going to come with the communication between the cities and the counties.
Yeah, because it's great that you came up here and you want to and willing to do it, but I think the other guys might want to know that we're up here too.
I don't disagree. And when the county commissioners are elected by district, but they serve the county as a whole, and they have to be involved with all of this. And from the county standpoint, really, I'm fortunate in my district, but about 40% of the county's tax money comes from the lakes.
Yeah.
From Nisswa to Cross Lake, and so and everything in between. So this is there's a real advantage to what we have to offer here.
Okay, well, I think I've said what I want to say, but I certainly encourage anybody who's got anything to say to please say it. Come on, John.
Jonathan Grothy, Ideal Corners, but my concern with a lot of this is that when you build county roads compared to city roads, they end up being wider. The wider makes people go faster. It's just a visual thing. On the front of this deal is showing lanes of parking and then a green stripe. And I like the idea of doing something that visually narrows down the road. And I guess to the county is, can we do those kind of things? And then how expensive is that? And I guess I have one question to the county here is, over by Grandview Lodge, they have placed some little bollards in there as sort of temporary-ish, but is that something that was acceptable to the county to do that? Or did they just do that because it definitely slows down people heading towards Lakeshore from 371 on 77 there? But it's definitely something that when you drive through there, you slow down for. And the more of that type of thing I think we can do, maybe the better we are, and then the crosswalks help and so on beyond that. The other thing I want to mention, the train club, the road that goes in and becomes kind of their northern parking lot, the city uses to get back to a sewer area. And so I don't think that there would be any trouble getting into that wetlands across that property. So I can bring that up at the board meeting at the train club if you want to proceed that as a deal. It's a lot less mess or things, so it'd be behind the train, but access that for any kind of work that needs to be done for dredging. So,
Yeah.
okay.
If I can, I'd like to address that situation at Grandview, because that was an example that I had been working with Grandview, and I invited staff up, and we stood out there and watched this. So that was really the county's idea, to set those cones out so that people would slow down, and that's, and actually, the state raised the speed limit from 50 to 55 on 77, but so they wouldn't pass on the right. So that was really the county's idea, because hopefully the future will be there is a roundabout to be able to have that traffic, and I think Grandview can have 2,000 people on site now. So that's kind of where that came in. But that's the advantage of, one, knowing what the issue is, and then getting staff here and let's walking through it and come up with a compromise. So I think that helped.
Great, thanks.
The other thing we were talking about, somebody mentioned speed limits, and in this book, it shows where they literally paint the speed on the road.
Show that to Bill.
And I know, it's going to wear off every winter and so forth, but I mean, it might be an issue for the summer. To be completely honest with you, I've lived here for 30 years and I'm still confused about the speed limits. When you're coming from Brainerd, you hit the Legion and it turns from 55 to 45, and then somewhere in there it turns to 35, and then you get to the fire hall and it goes back to 45, and then I don't know where it turns to 55, and so I just don't know if this might, especially for those folks that are seasonal and they don't even, they don't even know what our speed limits are. And then seasonally, can these speed limits change? Like, can we have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in the summer on 66 painted on the road so everybody knows, and then change it in the winter when there's like nobody here? I don't know.
Just a reminder to the council and the audience, the county is going to do a speed study this year. They are talked to MnDOT, and they're going to come out and do a study. So hopefully speed limits will be changing from North Wedge Nursery up to County Road 16.
Can I address that? The concern I always have with those speed studies is that usually it adjusts the speed up in terms of speed limit. Most highways they do, and then they take a percentage of how people are driving, and then they change the speed limit, but it's very rarely that it ever goes down. It usually goes up as far as the speed limit, which is worse of a concern then.
Well, and I guess, Char, is it the county that's going to do that study?
We made the request to the county a few months ago, and the county requests MnDOT to do that. And then when they get it in their schedule, if and when they decide to do that, we'll just be notified that they're doing a speed study. But to the gentleman that just spoke, typically what happens, and we've been warned this a couple times, that when you do a speed study, it typically goes up and not down. So that's one of the risks that we do take. And we were looking basically from Massieres to change from about Massieres or 103, that area, all the way up to 16, and then from 16 all the way to over to West Shore Drive was the area of study that we'd requested. So once we have information on that, if they're actually going to do it or not, because we've had a lot of requests for a speed study on 16. There are a lot of people walking on the roads between Moonlight and the wharf area and the bridge there. And we've been cautioned that, okay, but we could raise it because that's a nice wide road and there's a nice wide shoulder, and then it's really out of the local jurisdiction, meaning the cities, because we don't set the speed limit, the state does. And when they set them, that's what they are. They typically don't go down, they go up.
So
Mr.
Mike,
Mayor?
does that mean we can't challenge their finding?
We can challenge the findings. It depends on what those findings are when they do that test.
How difficult is it to just request, or do you have to have a speed study to request MnDOT to reduce the speed limit? Do you
My
have to
understanding
have a
is-
speed study?
My understanding of the way it works, if you want to change the speed up or down, because there are speed studies done because some places the speed is too low. So they take an independent view of that information. They send a technician out there and they count cars and they take track of time of day and speed and how comfortable people are driving at what speed they're driving at. And that's what they base their results on.
Okay. I guess I have another question too, is how does the county, do you participate in funding the sidewalks, the crosswalks, and the trails? I mean, do you have a percentage, 60, 40? Or?
No, I think when it comes to that is that usually the cost share participation is that we do what is necessary for the county roads. If you would choose to have sidewalks, that would be the cost of the city.
Okay.
And adding on. I know in Nisswa as an example, when they did that intersection by Schaefer's, Nisswa wanted a bike trail that goes along that would be the cost to the city for the sidewalks and the trails.
And that application has went in for the 2026 funding. Can that, if we want to go ahead and do a sidewalk or do some crosswalk improvements, can we just amend that? Or do we just keep it submitted the way it is, even if we, take the first step? And, I don't know if it's built in phases or not. I don't know that.
I would have to ask on that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, back in January, and we have resolution actually introduced by you at the county level to
Right.
support that project, and we have one from the chamber and the school and others for that. So we issued the application, we submitted the application back on January 9th. The information you have in your packet is the same information that we talked about at our February 8th meeting. At that time, we didn't know what the result was. So we've gone through this. This is our second pass through this. Now, the way this whole thing started was if you go back to about 2016 with the Cross Lakers, they identified all these areas. They wanted improvements. Out of that came the Blue Zone study. They took that, and back in actually about 2 years ago tomorrow, the study was commissioned for the pedestrian study. So a lot of the questions, where do people cross the roads, where do they walk, it's all dependent on where the sidewalks are. And one of the issues that came out of that was we had really good counts of where people were walking, how they were using the sidewalks. And what it came down to is people were pretty much crossing wherever they felt comfortable crossing, whether there was a crosswalk there or not. So the idea of the information you have in your packet is actually the presentation I gave to Region 5 requesting those funds, and that was back in February of this year. And the locations of those items, a lot of thought and consideration went into that with the county, with Tim Bray, the county engineer, and Woodseth, and Ted, and others put that information together. And the whole idea was to put a crosswalk where it made sense. Now, that might mean something different for different people, but what we were trying to do was to designate safe areas for people to walk, because the trail on the one side of the road that exists today is a grant and aid trail. So we've had requests in the winter, hey, I want that thing plowed so I can walk on it. Well, we can't do that. It's a snowmobile trail. You don't plow a snowmobile trail. So we presented information of people walking in the streets, no place to walk, people walking from the new senior living facility, where the sidewalks just stop and they don't go anywhere. And so the idea was twofold, was to put crosswalks that connected areas where people would walk so you could control where those people were walking in a safe fashion. The one thing I learned from that whole process was people are going to cross where they want to cross. They're not going to walk 2 blocks to go a crosswalk and then walk back. They're going to cross where they want to cross. And we're not going to be able to change that. But you can make some improvements where they feel safe. People do feel safe walking on the sidewalk that's designated as a sidewalk. And we went to the charter school. We got a participation letter from them. We went from the Paul Bunyan Scenic Byway. We got a letter of support from them in our grant application. So the information that's in your packet is a result of all of those studies beginning back into 2016 on where should we put crosswalks, what type of crosswalk should it be. The only issue we have right now is how do we pay for it? And we would follow the existing cost share agreement with the county. And one of the questions that came up from you, Dave, Nevin, was can we just do it and then get reimbursed later? Well, the answer to that's no. You have to be awarded the grant, but there are some cost things that if you can do, that if once you're awarded the grant with the budget, that if you want to speed that up, there may be an opportunity to do that, working with the county and the funding agency. But until you get the award for the money, you can't do the project and then hope you get an award to reimburse yourself at a later date.
I guess my question is that if we go ahead, because I don't feel like we should wait till 2026 for the funding. If we go ahead and you've already submitted this grant application, will that hurt? And I guess if it does, it does. The acceptance of the application, if we've done, say, a first phase of the project, and we don't wait till 2026, and we get started next year on the project, pick out the first phase, what makes sense for connecting sidewalks and trails that are ending. Can you, what I'm saying is, asking is, can you amend your grant application so they don't come back and say, well, you've spent this. I don't expect them to reimburse if we just go ahead and start, because that isn't how grant funding works. It's you wait till it's approved.
Right. The way grant funding works is you ask for a project to be funded.
Yeah.
And this one involves federal money, so the minimum life and maintenance period for the facility or building has to be 25 years or greater in this case. So that's why a lot of the sidewalks that were in there were cement, were concrete instead of pavement. And as far as the grant goes, we do not have an active grant application at this time.
Oh, you don't have an application in, so it doesn't make any difference if the city council would
It does make a
decide.
difference because it would change a future grant application. Each grant period is funded separately.
Yes,
And once the
I
grant
realize
period
that.
closes, then all those grants, you don't just amend it and say, well, here, change the dates and go forward. What you would do is you would submit a new grant application with a new plan, and if you did some revisions that were already identified, you would take those out because you've already done them.
So when is that grant application due for 2026? So that if
We don't know
decide-
that yet because it hasn't been funded at this point, so we don't know how much is available. We would know something probably later this fall if it's funded, and in what amount.
So that's when you'll be submitting the grant application?
We'll
This
submit,
fall?
well, it depends on what the council wants to do. If you want to, we'll come to the council and say, we believe there's this amount of money available. We'd like to apply for this much of it. And then we would present that to the council with the new engineering plan and with the new plan with Tim Bray and your staff to
So what
submit
if we
that.
say, okay, we pick a sidewalk that we want done next year for sure, and we take that out of the grant application, then that you submit?
Well, we'd
this
take,
fall?
again, we would submit the grant application for the items we're requesting to be funded.
Okay.
So if we take it, if we pick some things out of here that have been identified, that right now, that's our dime, not the county's.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything for Mr. Brecken?
Mr. Mayor, just want to let you know that usually we don't see flows at the treatment plant like this until the 4th of July. We're already there.
Yeah.
Our flows, there's that many people in town. We're already there. So
That's quite apparent all over the place.
we're well 6 weeks earlier than normal. So
Thank you, Corinne. I was trying to figure out how not to call you up here.
I tell you, wear a uniform somewhere and you can't hide. Corinne Hodap with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Ted, I agree with visitation. When I moved here 10 years ago, to the date yesterday, I didn't think it was possible for us to be busier than we were then. And it's just been a steady increase every year. And this year, like Cindy stated, we're going to have major record numbers on visitation. So not only just did our visitation increase in our normal use, but with the outlook of the Loon Center on the horizon also, our visitation is going to take another big bump. But we have never seen use in May like we have. Basically, we've been full every weekend in May, and we have never seen that before. We've had 60 to 70 units in there during the weekdays in May. We'd be lucky if we've seen 20 to 30 in the middle of a weekday in May. We've also seen visitation extend onto September. So usually now every weekend of September is full. Many coming on weekdays also. So not only has our visitation increased during the main part of the season, we've started extending over into the shoulder seasons, which generally are May and September, and into October. So it's not just the main part of summer anymore. Our use in the wintertime, depending upon the snow, can be crazy with the snowmobile trail. So I guess thoughts, one is what the Corps of Engineers can do to help the city, to help the county. One thing driving here today, sitting at that intersection of 66 and 3, one challenge there is the curve coming from the north and how fast people coming around that corner can be in that intersection. And so agree, Mayor, with the speed on that road, that makes that a challenge for people to see what's coming up, but also with people turning into the campground. I sit and look out my window because I don't get outside much anymore.
Cringe.
And cringe and watch people come in. I swear to goodness they come in at 20 to 30 miles an hour and pulling a rig the size of what they're pulling in. I don't know how they stop if something is in their way. So one thing I guess realizing is there something that we can be doing at that intersection as people come and leave from our site. One thing we have done is we have cut down several trees looking north from that intersection because it definitely was a blind intersection for us when I first got here. We've lost several trees, but we've also taken several down. But what it appears is that there have been many signs that have taken their place. And there's a request for other signs to go in that intersection because people want to be able to provide stuff, particularly for the Loon Center and our use for different events. And does that obstruct the view for what people see from there? So that is definitely something that I think we can look at to see if that helps with movement through that intersection. But also too, is there a way that we can encourage people to leave our campground by the entrance station, which I believe is Swan Drive there, using that intersection for crossing, which I believe has a better line of sight than what the 66 and 3 corner has. So if there's recommendations, please let me know. Always willing to sit down and have a chat and find out if there's something better that we can be doing. We are restricted on what we can do off our property, obviously, but always happy to provide an opinion if you want one. So don't hesitate to call and let me know if there's something that we can help with. But other than that, I think the speed is a challenge on that road. I'm happy to hear they're going to be looking at it. I hope it doesn't go the way that you're talking and increase speed, because that would really be challenging. But I believe there's little things that we can do, and I really do enjoy the sidewalk, or the crosswalk there. I walked over it the other day, and I tried not to look down and enjoy the new painting, because I was concerned about what was coming at me. So, but again, if there's something that we can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks, Corinne. So, Chief Lee, sometimes you see event, slow for event, or some kind of signage like that. Is that something that we could do?
We could.
On the 4th of July, or the weekends that were, the time?
Where do you want to start to put them? Where do you want to end them? I mean,
Well,
you're talking all of 66, all of 3.
Maybe an investment in those signs would be a good thing. There are several areas. But
I think we've got some. Ted's got some down at his facility. We can certainly put congestion ahead, pedestrian traffic, something to that effect. But again, as Green just said, there are signs getting put up, and I've talked to you guys about this, and at some point in time, there's gonna be too many signs and not enough time to read them as they're going through, so we need to be careful with that. You know, I don't foresee that the speed limit would go up from the 35 areas. 45s will probably remain the same, I'm guessing. We can look at signs, but again, the best thing that we're gonna be able to do is do some lights. That's gonna be the best, quickest fix, because people acknowledge those.
Flashing type lights?
Yep. But according to when I talked to Tim Bray last week, you know, in this study, they're $50,000 a piece. Per
intersection?
Per intersection, and that's installed. You know, I was looking at some, they were $4,000, I think.
Yeah.
Anywhere $2,000 to $4,000. They could be hardwired, they could be solar, but then you have the installation, which is, I guess, must be the cost.
Is that the handicap ramp for crosswalks? Is that what the big money?
We selected a brand that we found that seemed to provide all the things that we were looking at when we talked about it. And it's Tapco is the brand. It has a wig-wag
Yep.
style, so like his squad lights, how they do that different motion. So somebody pushes the button, it wig-wags. So it's signaling that there's somebody crossing. You can even get the option that a street light comes on and illuminates the crosswalk for nighttime. It's just where do you want to get the money to do it? That's where it comes down to.
Right, and the other thing is the county does have stipulations on what kind of crosswalk and what kind of lighting goes on there. I think it's the RRPB or something to that effect, rapid.
Yeah.
Yeah, rectangular, rapid, something, pulse, blah, 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 but, especially at 3 and 66 and 3 and Swan, that's big. How we deal with, Bald Eagle Pass and others, you know, that's something that we're gonna have to decide.
In our meeting earlier this morning, there was a large amount of money coming into the county. This looks like it's going to be grant-type funding available. I think maybe we need to start looking and seeing if we can tap into some of that bill, okay? Because there was a large amount of money sitting there. And so you mentioned 3, if I heard you correctly. You know, 150,000 might be something that's realistic to tap into that on.
Right. How much will the city be getting of that money, do you know? Or
It sounded like, in comparison to what you guys are getting, it's minuscule. It sounds like we're gonna get maybe, what was it, 300 that I heard?
It comes to between $100 and $105 a resident, based on the most recent census.
So roughly 300,000.
Yeah, a little less
Maybe.
than that.
I'm
And those numbers will be finalized. They're supposed to come out back on May 5th with that. There was some guidance issued back just last week on the 27th that we're digesting on what can it be used for and how much will it be and when can we get it and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Would you like to see some of the areas we're talking about?
But we're getting this much, and you guys are getting, okay, I'm just gonna point that out.
Well, I've got your handout.
Okay.
And then what I'll do is I want to get back, I think, with staff, and we'll do a walk. We got to do a walkabout.
Yeah.
And if when you do that, Bill, you're gonna contact.
I'll let you guys know when we're coming out.
Yeah.
Yep, we can do that.
Mayor, just real quick to wrap back around to your question and answer it. Ted and I will look into signs, and I think we have a meeting next Wednesday, Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, we should take it up
And we
there.
can bring that up back there and
Good.
bring some costs and signage options back.
Mr. Mayor, just be aware, right now, street signs are tough to get. If I ordered them today, I may have them this fall. So it's probably something that even if we ordered it for this season, we wouldn't get. I'm just being upfront with you, so.
So Is it reasonable to think that we can't really get much done this year?
Let's not give up that easy.
No, but I was just thinking, you must have paint, because you've used paint. I mean, can we work with the county to get bed crossing on some of these areas so that they can, it's right in front of them on the car, on the lane?
You mean add that to the crosswalks that are there?
Well, up by Pat's Place, up in that area, so there,
Yeah.
it's another warning for slow down.
And if you remember, to install the sidewalk, we have to have the permission to the crosswalk.
Right.
And you have to have them going from this junction to this junction. I mean, I can't just send them off in a driveway. I have to have a designated, appropriate crosswalk.
I was only thinking of painting the road, because I know that's a lot of
I
work.
can't just do that.
You can't.
No, that's not, you just can't, you have to have the designated, you have to have the ramp, you have to have all the bells and whistles.
Right, I get it.
Otherwise, you're taking on the liability for everybody.
But let's bring that question up again at that walk around when Bill comes back with the guys.
And we've discussed it with them before, and we'll ask again, but that's what we've been told before, so.
Will the county allow a raised crosswalk there?
You mean, like a bridge over?
Yeah.
I
That would
don't know
slow
why they
people
wouldn't.
down.
It's bigger maintenance, but yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't.
Maintenance for who?
Well, if we put it in, it's our maintenance.
Okay.
And that's the other thing is I've actually heard people say, well, that isn't what we want Cross Lake to look like.
Well, Mr. Brecken, I think, come on up, Cindy, I'm not closing this, but I think you can see the appetite that the city has got. I think the council is unified in doing whatever we can do.
We'll do some follow-up.
And we're looking for cooperation, in, maybe relaxing some of the rules and financial and, let's figure out how to do it is. Come on.
So the dilemma here is that it doesn't sound like anything can get done for this tourism season. The signs won't show up even if we did order them. There's more meetings to happen with the county, and now here we are in the middle of June. But we do have paint. So in my opinion, the big painted crosswalks just create a sense that you need to go slower. I think it just slows people down. They see those big white sidewalks or big white crosswalks and they just naturally slow. So my suggestion would be, can we paint more big bold lines throughout town? There's between the meat market and the school on Swan Drive. Could we make a big white one there?
That one will be getting done yet later on. That intersection is getting some repairs done between the county and the city. It's getting a overlay of chip seal because it's low right now and the water's standing there, so we're trying to get that off. That's why I didn't paint it, otherwise I would have painted it the day. That one hasn't been done yet, so yeah, that one will be done.
Big bold lines?
That's what I'm shooting for.
And then to address the intersection again, there is already the curve divots from the chamber building side to the campground. Can we paint another crosswalk there so that when people are traveling through that intersection, they see, and then maybe even from the campground to the campground on the bike path side of the road, just so that when people are in that intersection, they see those big bold lines all around the thing. And it would just make a bigger impression visually. And then I don't know what you have for crosswalks up by Reed's, but I know that's a nut job intersection as well, between the dollar store and Reed's grocery store. Is there a crosswalk there, and could there be, or?
That we'll have to ask the county, what we can do up on that intersection of 37 and Pioneer.
Yep.
What we'll have to do there. I know that was a topic of discussion way back when. I don't remember where that ever, do you, Eric, whatever came to be with that intersection from the dollar store to Reed's?
I don't recall ever having a discussion regarding.
I did with the county at one time, but I don't remember what it was, what ever came up to be of it.
Now that they've repaved that road, there's a lot more bike traffic on that road. as well. So in my opinion, there's an urgency here today, and I just feel like the white lines are just a visual slower downer. That's just my opinion.
Thanks, Cindy.
To follow on, as far as the intersection on the Cross Lake side, like Cindy mentioned, it's a possibility we could purchase the paint if you could do the work.
Well, work would be done by that contractor, Linescape, the one that's done work for you and I before.
Okay.
They did all they could do that day. They're going to be back in the area here in about a week. I can request them to come earlier if we identify some areas and see what we can get done.
So something we could
We
talk
could work
about.
with, yeah.
Okay.
Glad to work with you.
Anybody else have anything? So who's working on the crosswalk? Cindy? I mean, when Bill comes back up with the guys and we're gonna meet with them, Pat, has anything been done in front of your store, the Bald Eagle Road? Nothing. I mean, that has to be done too. And the reason we can't do that is because you don't have the ramps.
We don't have the ramps, we don't have you can't send them, you can't send the into the street, you can't send them from a driveway across. They have to be a dedicated, safe zone for those crossings.
Is that a county deal?
No, that goes back to the handicap and with accessibilities and engineering, the engineering,
But the
I can't
county
think what it's
still has
called.
to approve it, and I think be involved with it, right?
well, the council
It's
would
a
have to,
county road.
the county's gonna have to approve that spot, and the council's gonna have to approve it, and I think everybody's gotta put some kind of rubber stamp on it, so you accepted the liability of that location.
That is a really liability spot there. A lot of traffic there. So I don't know if you could come talk to the guys at the county.
Well, yeah, I'll try to get back up here within the next week with the staff, and so that we can kind of get this moving forward and see what our options are.
So, and then backing, if we were to add a crosswalk there, could we come back 50 feet or 100 or whatever it is and put no parking there so that cars aren't there for the kids to hide behind before they jump out and all that kind of stuff?
Like I say, we'll have to just get together and walk it through and see what our options are.
So is there any chance that you can ask your guys if without putting ramps or a crosswalk, can we paint something in the road as you approach these high-traffic areas? These people where people jaywalk, I guess that's what they're doing, that says, slow down, pads or something there. We have paint, just put it in the road so they see, and then, we're not telling anybody there's a crosswalk, we're just saying, please slow down.
Yep. Our main
I don't know what the rules are,
yeah,
so.
our main focus here is we're talking safety. So I think we gotta see whatever options we can.
That would be the quickest thing
And
we
see what we can implement, yep.
And could
get
you
our
find
heads
out
together.
what the penalty is if we go ahead and do it anyway and they? So we can fit
Well,
fit that into
there
the
is that
budget,
ask
too.
for forgiveness idea, so we can do that. But like I say, we'll get back up here as quickly as we can within the next week so that we can walk through it and get this process going.
Fabulous, Bill.
Because it is time. There's a time factor.
Okay, can we wrap this portion of the meeting up and let Bill get on with his day? Final, anybody? All right, let's close that. Mr. Brecken, thank you very much for taking your time and coming up. Okay, TJ, I believe this next one, review quotes for weed control.
I'll be right here. I'm here to support you.
All right. So in talking with Mike and Ted, just try to brainstorm what we can do with our weed control throughout the cemetery, the fire hall, the new city hall facility here, public works facility, and the community center. We brought up the idea to get some quotes from community landscape professionals and one from Pequot. I reached out to LA Lawn Care, Abra, and NCLC. NCLC did not get back to me. Do have one from LA Lawn Care and Abra. You don't have them in your packet just because I got the one from Abra last night at about 7 o'clock and the one from LA Lawn Care about 9:15. So that's why you did not have it in your hands. I was making a few phone calls. I know they're really busy right now. It's their busiest time of the year, so they were kind of behind on things. So they did get those in, and then I got one from True Green as well. So I'll just kind of run through these. I do want to give you a heads up. The one from True Green is for 5 applications per year, and the other 2 are 2 applications. Each landscape professional has their own program based on what they apply and what they suggest. So basically what I just told them is give us your program and give us application rates as to what you see on the, I walked throughout all the properties. What are we going to see a benefit? Are we going to see a benefit from 2 applications, 3 applications? And they came back with, LA had 2, Abra had 2 applications per property, and True Green came back with 5. So LA Lawn Care to spray the community center twice, City Hall twice, the Fire Hall twice, all the cemetery twice, and the Public Works facility twice in 1 year is $5,370.90. Abra came back with both, again, 2 applications per site a year at $5,778.72. And True Green came back at $4,466
For 5 applications?
for 5 applications,
For all the sites?
for all the sites.
Huh.
So, I already got an application put on the community center just because I needed to make a decision quick. It was getting really bad. It was choking out our turf grass. A lot of dandelions, a lot of creeping Charlie. Something needs to be done.
And the community center includes the ball fields and
Correct.
all the property?
Correct. But I think, based on that petition that we have with the cemetery, with the weeds, I'm surprised we haven't gotten anything from the community center, any complaints, just because it's getting out of hand and we have to do something.
Which one did you use for that one application?
Abra, just because we have in the past, and that one application was $1,300 for the community center alone. So it's a hefty penny, but I needed to do something.
Is this budgeted or is this something brand new?
This is brand new.
If you're trying to save money, there's one there.
Yeah. I'm going to try to branch off of that just a little bit.
Yep.
What luck have you had hiring your part-timer for mowing?
We have a part-timer, they're starting on Monday,
Okay. Focusing on the cemetery and doing
And the
whatever
trails.
else they can do.
Yep. So we will keep up with the mowing and the trimming. It's just now you mow and a day later the dandelions are popping up and it's taking over a turf grass. And from my experience now, Ted knows this too, if you don't take care of the weeds, in 5 years, 6 years, you will no longer have any grass and you'll have to go back and overseed or come up with some solution to get that grass back. It just chokes out the grass.
We've never done anything previously for dandelions anyplace?
We have sprayed in the past. But now this
In-house?
year,
Does
but
the
now
city have a sprayer?
we have a spreader. I don't know what, I only have a broadcast spreader for fertilizer, which we're gonna still take on that fertilizing application. This is just for weeds.
Right now, we have a sprayer unit and a fertilizer combination unit. It has a hopper for doing the fertilizer, and then it has a sprayer tank on it. What our staff is telling us, they don't feel comfortable doing the spraying anymore. They just don't feel safe with all the things out there in these chemicals. They don't feel safe doing it. So we have to come up with an alternative, and that was our alternative, was to hire it out.
So
I will say, they're all pretty comparable. Between Ted and I, if we were to buy the chemicals to spray and pay staff to go spray, it would be pretty comparable.
So
I don't know the exact breakdown, but
one question I have is the 5 application person, the company, True Green?
True Green, yep.
So if they did one application, what do they come every month?
I don't know, they didn't say in here specifically how many times they'd
could
come.
you
I know they do a lot of spot spraying in the summer.
Could you turn them off after 2 applications if all of the prior 2 killed everything?
Could. I know True Green,
Just try to save money.
a lot of landscape professionals, they don't spray in the middle of the summer just because it's harsh on the blades.
Yeah.
It's really hot and we have cool season turf. They like to spot spray and they go a little bit less on the chemicals. So if stuff starts popping up in the summer, they'll come back and hit it again. That's just, again, their different application and what they recommend for their program.
So is it too late to spray now?
In the fall is when you kill all your weeds.
Yeah.
Right now, it would be damage control. The clovers are gonna start popping up here in July, middle of July. They could maybe touch those again. That would be kind of a spot spray basis or kind of hit it in clumps. But if we really want to see a big turnaround, it would be maybe a couple applications in the fall. And then here, at City Hall, I know that Abra and LA Lawn Care, they just said, we want to maybe address some other issues, or they can talk to some staff about how we can get some more turf grass coming up before they would spray this facility. I just wanted to make sure we got all of our facilities on here so we could compare numbers.
Can we spot spray since it's too late already?
Spot spray in the community center right now would be, you'd have to spot spray everything, essentially.
That's what the cemetery would be too, would be the whole place.
Right now, around our playground, we mowed it just a few days ago, so you can't see it, but it was.
So we
bad.
have weeds at the cemetery?
We have weeds at the cemetery.
No.
I'd just do True Green.
So what were they, 5,000, 5,700, and?
LA was 5,370 and 90 cents. True Green was 4,466 even. And then Abra was 5,778 and 72 cents.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we go with True Green and look for the money.
Okay.
Get the money from someplace, so.
I have money in my budget for chemicals. I have money in my budget for buying the
I'll second
chemicals
his
that we
motion
use at
so
our
you can
facility,
keep
so.
Going.
So we got a motion, do we have a second on it?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, and then this is something that I'll probably bring back, Ted and I will bring back for next year's budget so we can get something put in right away and get it addressed right away in the spring. Okay, thank you.
Wait, no, we haven't voted
Oh,
yet,
sorry.
but one more question, I guess, while we're in the conversation mode is the sprinkler system working here?
Yes, we just increased the time last week. We actually went to twice a day and increased the time because of the hot weather.
Yeah, okay.
And our pump is down, so that's where it looks a little crispy. We had a pump in the storage shed that was a replacement because we knew it was getting old. We had it hooked up. We're still having some issues. It may be something to do with our box, our irrigation box. So we're having somebody coming out tomorrow. So that's why it looks a little crispy over there, if you get any complaints.
No rain.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. True Green it is.
Thank you, council.
Yeah. Okay, next we need a motion to approve bills for payment. Everybody look through them.
I looked through them, I didn't see anything that concerned me, so I'll move that they be approved as submitted.
I'll second it.
Okay, any other questions on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, next, I guess, Mike, do you want me to give it to you or to give it to Marcia, the reallocation budget?
You can give it to me. TJ, why don't you put me up on overhead here? You've got a budget document that you've seen in the past. I'm just gonna go cut right to the chase.
Last
I'm
page.
gonna go to the last page. One of the questions I get every year and we seem to have a lot of confusion on, is how do we fund our capital outlay? Because that's where all the big dollars are. This is the last page. That'd be in the back, last page. So our original budget, we've got just over $4 million of capital outlay, and that includes everything. Everything we spend that's not an operating item, whether it's a truck, a sprayer, new guns for the police, squad car, computers for admin, tables, microphones, whatever it is. And then I look at how are we going to pay for this stuff. And one of the concepts we've done is we've tried to keep our levy as low as we can, because we wanted to build in each year a certain amount for ongoing capital items, because we always have to buy a squad car or a tractor or a lawnmower or whatever it is, computers. Then I look at how are we going to pay for it. And I really start at the bottom of this, and I said, we balance what we're going to buy with new debt, because we don't want our levy to be huge and pay everything for cash, but we also want to recognize that we're levying to keep whatever debt we do issue at a minimum. So in the budget for 2021, we had $879,000 for the fire truck. That was our best guess. And we had just under $900,000 for the 2021 road projects, which we delayed. And we talked about this back in January and February. And what happens when you delay road projects is if you've built into your levy a component to help current year levy pay for them, you're still going to get the money whether you do the project or not. If you stop the project after you've done your levy for it, you can't call the county and say, don't levy for our roads. You're still going to get the money you levied for. So when I take into account things that we did in the budget, we had about $164,000 of cash left over from $98,000 of that was Wildwind Road. And the remainder was basically Ted's department for equipment that the county, you and the county decided not to do. Then we looked at how do we reconcile the sewer fund, because we didn't have what we're going to do with projects. So we set aside in our budget money to do that. We're going to pay cash for the fire hall of just under $1 million of what we had left when we did the estimate back in December. So the difference comes from your levy. That's how much you levied for stuff in your current year budget, whether it's a road, a squad car, or whatever it is. So we used that to balance out the whole process. Then we started making changes we talked about. So if we make all those changes, we're taking $1.2 million out of the capital, $1.3 million out of capital. Most of that was the roads. So then you just rebalance everything, say, how are we going to pay for this stuff? That gives you $480,000 of money you're going to get that you haven't assigned somewhere. Does that make sense to everybody? So big picture, if you say, okay, I'm going to go back a couple pages here. I'm going to go back to what is your page 30. Wait till everybody gets there. In our original budget, we had these $419,000 of overlay projects. We had $996,850 of reconstruction. It's about $1.4 million. If you take and put in a new number for what it's going to cost to change engineers and delay this to 2022, this is Phil Martin's best estimate on the planning stage for those projects. We'll have new numbers for all of these going into 2022 when this process is done. So that's really what's generating the biggest difference in your budget right now. So these are the two road projects that you would issue bonds for, potentially, and assess a portion of it, okay? Now, if I go ahead quite a few pages, I'm going to go to page 8. of this document. This was our adopted budget. Here's your capital outlay again. And this is how much we talked at budget that we didn't have assigned to a specific project. We said we have some contingency built in there. You know, if we need to change something or something we haven't planned for. That'd be page 5. Page 5. Yep. There you go, page 5. Everybody on page 5? Okay. And this you've seen before. This is what was approved for the budget back in December. And at that time, you know, we said we're going to need to transfer some money over to the sewer fund. That hasn't changed, depending on what we actually end up doing there. And that's how much we have for what we haven't identified or new things that come up, okay? If we make these changes that we've talked about at the last several meetings, and I'm going to go to page 4. That same document looks something like this. You've got a new capital outlay number, 2.7 million. And there's a lot of different things that change. So to say, well, I'm going to get this donation and it's going to be the golden egg that saves everything, you have to consider everything. Because remember, we made changes in the budget for the mowing position. We put it into 3 different departments. We took capital outlay out of the cemetery. We made a lot of changes for Ted. We increased the dirt budget for gravel and things like that. So that unassigned number grows quite significantly. And the reason it grew was because of what we just talked about on the last page, delaying the road projects. We can't turn the tap off for the money we levied for it, okay? So what you have in this document is a summary of all of the things. If you go to page 1 of that document, what I tried to do, for those of you that are tracking it, the challenge here is to provide a high enough summary, a high level summary with enough detail that everybody's need is met. This was your revenue budget, total revenues. That was approved, including bonds, everything. And this is the stuff here on the revenue side that changed. Now there's a few other changes that are in there too that net to about $1,200-1,500. Not a big deal. One of the things I'm waiting to get a handle on is what were our tax collections. You know, everyone paid their taxes in earlier this month, property taxes. Later this month, we'll get our first remittance on that from the county when they sort out how much of that is current and how much is delinquent. So as far as making big decisions on what we need to change, this will give you a pretty good idea, but I'd really wait until we see what our tax collections are coming in at, because we might be doing just fine and we might need to make further changes for revenue shortfalls. So when you look at this, these are all the things I know today, and I tried to run the impact of this through each department and what it does to our whole budget, because while a lot of us are only interested in a certain part of the budget, I have to look at the whole thing and report the whole budget to you and our auditors. The 2 pages that follow that is a change by department of what changed. And this would be on page 2. So this number here, that was the total expenditure budget we approved last December, the council approved. And what follows below it is by department all of the changes that we've talked about. All of you have had comments, changes at council meetings. I've tried to capture that. We've approved some at the last meeting that Ted changed. So there's a lot of changes in here. It's not just one item that changes, it's the whole thing. And when you go through it, total expenditures went down by about $1.2 million. A lot of that was the road project. So you're really taking the road projects out and all the other little changes we've made during the year. And then how do you reconcile this? Now we have a new estimate on completing the fire hall. We were at, $989, whatever, how much cash we needed. Some of that stuff got delayed into this year we're in now. So we think that's how much cash we're going to end up spending to get that thing done in the next month or so. There's still quite a few pending invoices from High Tech on wrapping up their end of it with pricing. We're still waiting for. So this will kind of get you a pretty good idea of what's changed, give you something to think about for review. I don't know if you want to have a debate on all of these different things today. We've already been here an hour and
just one question.
Sure,
Mike?
hour and 20 minutes.
On page 12, legal fees, labor. What is our legal fee going to end up with, or what have we spent already?
I don't have the
I haven't
spent
seen
number.
anything on that.
You'll see that in our, we're actually reckoning out May right now, but based on your comment, Councilman Bowles, you said you needed it to be about 100,000 for legal. I'm not sure what that's based on. So what I did is I plugged it. I went from 17,000 and I pro rata made that come out based on our budget to what I've got right here for 41 and 59. So if you've got better information on that, I'd like to see it. But again, this is for
Is
discussion.
that just labor or civil and labor for
Both.
100,000?
Both. The civil is at 41 and the labor is at 59. I just did it the same proportion as those two. But as you go through this, you probably have a bunch of other questions, comments, and change. But again, I wouldn't make any huge decisions on this until we see what our tax revenues come in at.
So nothing reflects the ARP funding, the American Rescue Plan funding.
It does not.
Okay.
And the discussion I heard today was now you've got a decision to make. If you've got a project, you want to do something immediate, the guidance came out on the 27th, the last month, on maybe you could spend that money on the crosswalks and sidewalks. Because one of the challenges the county will have on the crosswalks is, well, that's really nice. You want to bring this forward, but we're not going to let you put a crosswalk to the grass. We're going to make you put a sidewalk in too. And they'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I guess at this point, that crosswalk is, according to citizens, pretty urgent. So I guess maybe a sidewalk,
Yep.
on the other side, I guess we just have to address that.
Yeah, because what you really have to do is, I don't have it, but in your packet, you've got the presentation I gave to Region 5 that shows all the challenge areas and where the crosswalks and the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, is that what it is? Would be, those are very expensive to put in. And the way the county was, I'll talk specifically about the ice cream shop. They're not real big on putting a crosswalk right in front of the ice cream shop. The reason for that is it dumps into a driveway on the other side where the trail is. So there wasn't a good place, and if they're so close to the intersection already, they're looking at putting it at the intersection just to the north and routing people with the flashing beacon there, because then you're not in a driveway, you're in an intersection where people would be expecting to see conflicts.
So did the legislature pass, I guess I never got any information on it, but they were contemplating small cities assistance funding this year. Did they pass that?
I haven't seen anything on that. I haven't seen anything on our sales tax either. So.
Yeah, I just don't want to be real Debbie Downer. But we all know how fast government moves, and when you're working with partners, like I harped here, that, you know, the only material that we have is paint. If we want to do anything else, all the contractors are busy. I mean, somebody'd have to be pushed out of the way to come in here and do something for us. And I just don't think we'll get it done this summer, but if we want to get it done as soon as we can, it's probably next summer. So we've got to kind of get something going.
Well, and you're gonna have to engineer it, you're gonna have to come up with a
Right,
set of
yeah,
specs,
yeah.
you're gonna have to go through the bidding process. All of those things have to
It
take
just-
place.
It just
so.
doesn't happen, you know, like they want to have it now.
Yeah, and you know, the discussion in the community need hasn't changed since 2016. You know, we've been talking about it. I mean, that's really what started the Blue Zone studies. I remember being on the phone with the group saying, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move people from this area to this one. You know, and they were calling from, I believe, California. So they didn't really have a concept of ice-covered roads and snow and well, why do you need a sidewalk? Because you got one on the one side of the road, that's good enough. Well, no, that's a snowmobile trail. Oh, got it. You know, we can't use it from, you know, December 1st to April 1st, essentially. You know, the county, now, once we know what the transportation funding is, you know, we'll have just as good a chance as we did last year on it. I remember 2 years ago now, we were awarded about $256,000 for it. It was leftover money they were looking to place, but we turned it down. The reason we turned it down is because between the city and the county, we would have had to have, the city would have had to have picked up the entire balance of that. The county wasn't willing to participate. You know, they weren't sure what was going to happen with the pandemic, and everyone was just kind of pulling back at that time.
I'm thinking we're going to just have to, you know, by the time this all gets approved, it's out into 2026. I think if we really want to do something, we're going to have to do a little bit that's at the top of the list and pay for it ourselves. I think in that grant program, we were still, wasn't the city's portion 100 and some thousand, 130, or did I read that wrong? The grant was $5 million.
The grant portion was, I think, 561, and you know, there was really kind of a moving target with the county on that, because we were looking at,
No, it was more.
it was 293,000 would be the ineligible items, which it would be about,
County paying half?
well, not quite, it depends on what it is, whether it's this is how the eligible costs were 701,000, of which we were looking at funding of 561. So the items not eligible was the difference. There was another 293, and then we were looking at figuring out which curb cuts and storm sewers to replace, and
So we're going to have to pay something anyways.
we're going to have to pay a significant amount
It'll just be less
anyways.
down the road.
Yeah, it could be,
Yeah, but we just can't do it all.
yeah.
Mike, when will you get your money from the county from taxes? Is it going to be like July 1st or July 30th, or do you have a feel when you'll,
We'll get,
this for 6 months?
the county is required to remit to us 70% of the May 17th collections within 30 days. So by about later this month, we'll get a big chunk of it. And then, see, right now, the county is in collection mode and figuring out what they collected and assigning and, you know, posting all of, you know, the tens of thousands of tax payments they got from the county. You know, whether it's from a mortgage company or from Marcia's checkbook or wherever taxes are paid from. They'll sort that out, apply it to all the properties, and then they'll tell us how much is current and how much is delinquent. You know, and based on our levy, if they, for example, if our levy says, if our levy is $4 million and they say your current collections are $2 million, I can say, okay, well, I feel pretty comfortable we're gonna collect all of our taxes, because we got 50% of what was due, maybe a little more. Because a lot of people, if they have a small property or a garage on it or something, or a pole shed, they'll just pay the full bill right away.
But you probably won't know by June council meeting on the 14th.
I won't know on the 14th.
Okay, thanks.
The detail on it. I'll know towards the end of this month. So again, what I would do is I would take a look at this, digest it, send me your questions, say, hey, I didn't mean that. I wanted this to change and not that. And tell me those amounts and say, I don't understand what this means.
I have a question on insurance. Did that go clear up this year?
Which insurance?
Well, in the insurance expenditures, I think you have over budget by 6,600 in the general, and in police 4,000. I just wondered if insurance upped, or did you reallocate differently this year?
Well, we reallocated it based on the budget. We made some changes in the budget. I know workers' comp went up.
Oh, I think your insurance and your work comp are two separate things, but just wondering if the League of Minnesota Cities insurance premium went way up.
It did go up, yes, and it went up different between departments. I've got all the detail on that. I don't have the answer to that right now for you.
Okay, I just wondered, and I guess I didn't take the time to find one that maybe was under budget, and that it was just reallocated different this year, that I'm not sure about. The 28,000 on that we talked about last week or whatever, that penalty that was assessed in planning and zoning. Is that reflected in here anywhere? Because I'm not seeing it, and
It's the fourth number from the top on page 1.
on page 1?
Yep.
But is it in the, okay, that's in your summary, right?
Yep. That's in the here's what changed.
Okay, so it's not really shown on the detail.
It's in the detail too.
Is that, what page
Yep.
is that? I don't know why I'm having a difficult time seeing that.
So the way this is built is it's a high-level summary up front,
Oh, I see it.
and
I'm
then
sorry.
it's in the 84,624 on page 6.
On page 7, you have it.
And then on page
28.
7, it's about midway, it's in account 101-34108,
I don't know how I missed that, but.
right in the
I
middle.
get it.
Okay?
How about
Linda, you found them.
are they spending $5,000 for that archiving social media?
No.
Because my understanding is that comments can be deleted as soon as you read them, that they wouldn't have to be archived.
I'm not versed on archive social. That would be falling Eric and TJ.
Yeah.
I left that in their wheelhouse. So get your questions to me.
I do have one other question. I'm sorry.
I'm shocked.
Park and Rec, we talked about that just
Yep.
briefly. The trails are in Public Works, and, but they're under the direction of Parks and Rec, right?
They're under the direction of both. If there's something major on it, construction, things like that, we run it through Ted because typically it's done as part of a road project. If they do any major repairs, we run it through Ted because he looks at it as part of, like crack sealing, overlays, things like that. If a giant tree falls on it, TJ and Ted flip a coin and see who's available to go pick it up. But what we're moving towards is for the maintenance side of it. TJ has been keeping track of how long it takes them to do trails.
Right.
Because we didn't have a dedicated person to mow trails. One day it would be one of Ted's guys, the next day it would be one of TJ's.
But if you want to talk trails, you would go to TJ, not.
Yeah, for an existing
Yeah.
trail, if you wanted
Yeah.
to talk, hey, I got a
So-
problem with this trail.
Yeah. I'm not, I
And-
just
Yep.
don't, yeah, I just.
But that's
I'm
why.
not understanding why you have trails under Public Works when it's TJ's responsibility.
Well, I explained that. The major construction of that
Yeah,
is under
but you
Ted. And it's a placeholder in the budget, so if we build a trail or we do a major repair on it, then
Like,
that's
yeah, you
Ted's
can-
wheelhouse.
You can do that in Parks and Rec though, too.
Yep. And in a lot of communities, Parks and Rec is a subdivision of Public Works. Baxter does it that way, right? It's not its own department. Here it's its own department because we have a library. It's just it's not right or wrong, it's just a difference in how it's been set up and what's been decided. Okay?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So we looked at reducing the budget for departments, $20,000 for myself for squad cars.
Yep.
Knowing that that is a placeholder that we have to hold over the next couple of years to reduce the amount when there's a year that we buy 2 squad cars. Ted had items in his budget that were budgeted items that need to be done. So I think we reduced something to the effect of $80,000. Is that what from budgets?
86, I think.
86?
Oh, from
But-
Ted's budget.
From
was
Ted's
86.
and mine and
Yeah.
whomever else's. So
But
at
then
some
we
point in
added
time, those are
58.
budgeted items that we identified as things that need to be done in the future. So you are already looking at an $86,000 increase in a budget next year, the following year, something like that. How do you intend to?
Well, the problem here is that we have 58,000 in engineering for just the roads, right? And 39,000 for sewer. So we
Okay.
need the whole 86,000 just for engineering.
I thought this was for labor attorney fees, is what you identified
There
that
is
as.
labor attorney fees.
Okay.
That's where the rest of the budget reallocation is coming from.
Okay. Are
Well,
we planning
that's not
for a
entirely
war?
true. What we did was, again, that's where we get hung up on looking at one line item instead of the whole budget. You could make the same argument that said, well, I'm gonna use the planning and zoning, I'm gonna use the 28,000. I'm gonna use the adjustments to the Mission and Manhattan fire contracts, the sale of the truck. So you have to look at the whole thing. I mean, unless it's a dollar for dollar swap, you really can't do that. I have to look at the whole picture. So that's why I did it this way, because I wanted to know when we get to the end of the year, can you throw this back up there, TJ?
But Chief's making a good point, that we're gonna have to fund this stuff eventually,
Yeah.
2022 or
Yep,
whenever.
you're
So,
making a really good point.
We're building in some funding that we're gonna need to do another year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've actually, we're not gonna spend that 593,000.
I don't know if we are or not. We could carry it over.
From what's on here, if nothing changes. Sorry, if nothing changes, we probably won't spend that, right? It'll just be in the bank.
This is what I've identified as what we don't have assigned to some place. Now, remember, the first number was 101? We said, well, okay, should we reduce our levy by that? I said, well, we could do that, or we could increase the amount of bonds we issue. Now, one way to avoid doing that is if you're going to have projects that you're going to issue bonds for. Let's say you have a bond that you're going to issue you have a project that's $1.2 million. Typically, what we would do is we would say, okay, we're trying to make our levy smooth with some growth in it for the cost of doing business. And so the way we do that is we build some cash, some levy, and some debt. You could say, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. If we do a road project for $1.2 million, I'm going to issue $1.2 million of debt. Then you don't have to reassign anything, and it's cleaner. Previous councils have chosen not to do that because they didn't want to say all of a sudden, wham, there goes my levy. We were trying to keep it stable so you don't, have this peak and valley effect and have people throwing rocks at you at council meetings. So, as of today, this is my best guess of what we haven't assigned yet. Now, that'll change. TJ's got some things to reassign. We're going to look at salaries and benefits, real soon when we start rolling forward this budget and see how things go. Yes.
The 753,000 assigned funds, I didn't see the detail on that for the end of the year. You had in the financial audit, you had 753,000 in assigned.
Yep, we presented
capital
that during the
project.
audit presentation.
What?
We presented that at the audit presentation, the
Oh,
detail.
I guess, maybe it was just put up on the deal. Because I looked in the financial statement, the audit.
Yep, yeah, I know what the audit is. I can send that to you. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it wasn't. in
No, I know what
the
you're saying, and I'll
audit.
send it to you.
Okay, perfect, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Chip, questions? No.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.